Kubernetes, right? Everybody's talking about it. It's amazing for managing those containerized applications that seem to be everywhere these days. But, you know, there's a catch.
Always is, right.
What happens when you've got Kubernetes clusters all over the place? Different clouds, some on-premise, AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. It gets kind of messy.
Oh, yeah, definitely. A real headache for a lot of organizations. And it's only getting worse.
That's exactly what we're diving into today, those Kubernetes cluster management solutions for multi-cloud. Seems like everyone's trying to figure out how to control these clusters, keep them secure, and make sure they're not breaking the bank.
Absolutely. Those are the big three, for sure. Control, security, and cost. You got to nail all of them.
And you actually shared some research that points to 8 popular solutions trying to solve exactly that.
Yeah, it's a crowded space, which can make it even more confusing to know where to start.
Before we get lost in the weeds, though, let's talk about the core problem first.
Hmm.
Why is managing all these clusters such a pain?
All right, imagine this. You're a conductor, right, leading an orchestra. But instead of musicians, you've got hundreds of these Kubernetes clusters. Each one's playing its own tune on different instruments.
Oh, sounds like a recipe for chaos.
Exactly. Trying to keep them in sync, secure, and cost-effective, that's a monumental task. And the research actually shows that the number of clusters companies are dealing with is exploding, making this problem even more critical.
So we need some serious conducting skills to wrangle all these clusters, huh? That's where these cluster management solutions step in.
Right on. They're like the conductor's baton, trying to bring some order to the chaos.
The research names 8 leading contenders: Red Hat OpenShift, VMware Tanzu, Google Anthos, Platform 9, Spectro Cloud, Rofe Systems, D2iQ Kubernetes Platform, and Cloud Casa. Phew, that's a mouthful.
It is, and they all have their own strengths and weaknesses, which we'll get into.
Okay, so let's start with the big picture. If you're looking for a solution, what are the must-haves, the non-negotiables?
Well, one of the biggest pain points with multi-cloud Kubernetes is that lack of centralized control. You don't want to be jumping between different dashboards and tools for each cloud provider. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, no one wants to juggle a dozen different interfaces, that's for sure.
Right. So ideally, you want a single pane of glass, that one place to manage everything.
Decentralized control, got it. What else?
Okay, well then, obviously, security, that's huge. These clusters are holding your crown jewels, your applications and data. You can't afford to mess around with that.
Right. No letting those clusters run wild in the cloud. Got to keep them on a tight leash.
Exactly. So you need a solution that can enforce consistent security policies across all your environments, no matter which cloud they're running on. And then there's the cost thing.
Yeah, the dreaded cloud bill.
Kubernetes can be a resource hog if you're not careful. So you need a solution that helps you right-size your clusters, make sure you're not over-provisioning, and that you're only paying for what you actually use.
So keeping those cloud costs from ballooning out of control.
Exactly. If you can get control, security, and cost optimization right, you're in a good place.
All right, we've talked about the problem, the must-haves. Now let's dig into some of those solutions themselves. From the research, Red Hat OpenShift and Platform 9 seem particularly interesting. Let's start there.
Sounds good. Let's unpack those two.
What jumps out at you about OpenShift?
Well, based on what you've shared, OpenShift seems like it's the top choice for those big companies. The ones with serious security and compliance needs. Think of it like the Fort Knox of Kubernetes management platforms.
Okay, so what makes it so secure?
Well, they've really gone all out with a defense-in-depth approach to security. That means multiple layers of protection built right in. You've got things like image scanning, checking for vulnerabilities before you even deploy anything.
Smart. Catch those problems early.
Right. And then they've got robust access controls and auditing so you can track who's doing what inside your clusters. It's pretty comprehensive.
So if you're in a highly regulated industry like finance or healthcare, OpenShift seems like a good bet.
Oh, absolutely. If security is paramount, that's where you'd probably start. But, and there's always a but.
There's always a trade-off. What's the catch with OpenShift?
Well, it can be pretty complex. Setting it up, managing it, it's not for the faint of heart. And for smaller organizations that don't have those intense security needs, it might be overkill. Like using a sledgehammer to crack a nut, as they say.
Right. Too much power can sometimes be a problem. What about Platform 9 then? The research highlighted how easy it is to use.
Yeah, Platform 9 is all about simplicity. Think of it as Kubernetes for, well, anyone.
Okay, I like that. Kubernetes for everyone.
Yeah.
How does it make things simpler?
Well, for starters, you can deploy a new Kubernetes cluster in minutes. Literally. through their sauces platform. They handle
Uh-huh.
all that complicated stuff, setting up the infrastructure, managing it. You don't need a PhD to get started.
So it's like Kubernetes on autopilot.
Pretty much. Which is great for smaller teams, those who might not have a dedicated Kubernetes expert on staff.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so we've got OpenShift, the security powerhouse, maybe a bit complex, and then Platform 9, the easy button, but maybe not as much control. What other comparisons stand out to you?
Well, one thing that caught my eye was Cloud Casa. It's not a full-blown platform like those two, more of a specialist, focused just on backup and disaster recovery.
Oh yeah, Cloud Casa, it was on the initial list. But why is that such a big deal for Kubernetes?
Think about it. You could have the most secure, well-managed cluster in the world, but if something goes wrong and you can't get your data back, you're in big trouble.
So it's like insurance for your Kubernetes clusters.
Exactly. Cloud Casa is that safety net. Gives you a simple, automated way to back up your clusters and restore them quickly if disaster strikes. And it works with any cloud provider, which is a big plus.
So it seems like even if you go with a big platform like OpenShift or Tanzu, you still might need something like Cloud Casa for extra data protection.
You got it. It all comes down to understanding your specific needs and picking the right tools for the job. No one-size-fits-all in the Kubernetes world.
This is giving me a lot to think about. It seems like there's a whole spectrum of solutions out there, each with its own pluses and minuses.
Yeah, and we're just scratching the surface here. There's a lot more to uncover.
And there's more. The research also mentions some extra security tools, things like Aqua Security, Sysdig Secure, Kyverno. Why would someone need these if they're already using a platform like OpenShift?
Good question. That's where managing Kubernetes security gets a little tricky. You see, platforms like OpenShift provide a solid security base, but they might not cover every single security aspect in depth.
So like having a good home security system, but maybe wanting to add some extra sensors or cameras just in case.
Perfect analogy. So you have Aqua Security. They're known for container image scanning and runtime protection. Imagine a security guard for your running applications, always watching for suspicious activity, blocking any malicious attempts to break into your containers.
An extra layer of protection, specifically for those unique container challenges. Okay, what about Sysdig and Kyverno? What do they bring to the table?
Well, Sysdig's all about deep visibility, helping you see what's happening in your Kubernetes environments so you can spot and respond to threats in real time. They're great at catching those sneaky attacks that exploit vulnerabilities in your running containers, like a detective uncovering those hard-to-find clues.
And Kyverno?
Kyverno's the enforcer, focused on policy enforcement. Think of it as the rule book for your Kubernetes clusters. With it, you can define very specific security policies like no containers can run as root or all images must be scanned before deployment.
So like setting those ground rules, making sure everything plays by the book.
Exactly. And these are just a few examples. There are a ton of tools out there, each with its own niche.
Wow, this is already a lot to digest. Choosing the right Kubernetes management solution isn't just about ticking off features on a checklist, is it?
Definitely not. It's more nuanced than that.
It's about understanding your specific needs, figuring out your security requirements, working within your budget, and even considering the expertise you have on your team.
You got it. It's all connected, and it's not always an either decision. Sometimes you need a mix, a core platform, some specialized tools, and maybe even custom solutions for those unique situations.
I'm starting to see that. This is more like assembling a puzzle, finding the right pieces that fit your needs and putting them together for a secure and complete picture.
Perfect way to put it. And the puzzle pieces are always changing too, which makes things even more exciting.
Because Kubernetes isn't standing still, right? It's evolving all the time.
Exactly. And these solutions are constantly adding new features and capabilities.
Which means we can't just look at what's available today. We need to consider how these solutions are adapting to the future of Kubernetes. What trends are you seeing that might change how we manage clusters down the line?
Well, one that's really taking off is edge computing. More and more companies are putting applications at the edge, which means they need a way to manage those Kubernetes clusters scattered across different locations.
Oh, that makes sense. A few clusters in the cloud is one thing, but hundreds or even thousands at the edge, that's a whole different beast.
You got it. And a lot of those traditional management solutions weren't built for that kind of distributed complexity. We're seeing new solutions pop up designed specifically for edge environments.
Like the Wild West out there at the edge.
Yeah.
What should we be looking for in a solution that can handle those edge deployments?
One of the biggies is a lightweight architecture. You don't want to be putting clunky software on those resource-constrained devices at the edge. Solutions that use a lean Kubernetes distribution, like K3s, are gaining traction for edge deployments.
Keep it lean and mean at the edge, right?
Absolutely. And then you need the ability to automate cluster lifecycle management. Imagine trying to manually provision, configure, and update hundreds of edge clusters. You'd never sleep.
Sounds like a recipe for burnout.
Right. You need a solution that can automate all that stuff and make it easy to deploy and manage clusters at scale. It's like having a self-driving car for your edge clusters. They just take care of themselves.
I love that analogy. Self-driving clusters. What about security at the edge?
Oh, that's critical. Edge environments can be really vulnerable because they're often outside those traditional security perimeters. You need a solution that can handle robust security at the edge. Stuff like secure device onboarding, zero trust networking, and automated threat detection and response.
Like Fort Knox goes mobile.
Exactly. And this brings up an interesting point. As we move towards more distributed and edge-centric deployments, we need to rethink security entirely. The old perimeter security model just doesn't cut it anymore. We need to move towards zero trust, where every device, every application, every user is a potential threat.
So it's not just about securing the clusters themselves, it's about securing that whole ecosystem around them.
You got it. And that's where things get really interesting. We're moving beyond just managing Kubernetes clusters. We're talking about managing an entire distributed infrastructure spanning clouds, data centers, and edge locations. And that requires a new way of thinking about management, security, and operations.
That's a lot to take in. It's not just about choosing a tool or platform. It's about understanding the bigger picture and adapting to those trends shaping the future of Kubernetes.
Exactly. And that's what makes the research you've shared so valuable. It goes beyond just listing features and benefits. It helps you understand the why behind the what. It gives you the context to make informed decisions about how to manage Kubernetes, both now and in the future.
Okay, so we've covered a ton of ground here. Different approaches to centralized control, the rise of edge computing, the evolving security landscape, and the need to understand the bigger picture. What does all this mean for you, the listener?
That's a great question, and one we should definitely spend some time on. It means you're not just choosing a Kubernetes management solution.
You're choosing a strategy for navigating this complex and ever-changing world.
Perfectly put. It means you're not just choosing a Kubernetes management solution.
You're choosing a strategy for navigating this complex and ever-changing world.
Perfectly put. And the best way to develop that strategy is to start with a clear understanding of your own needs and goals.
So let's recap what we've learned during this deep dive. We started by talking about the challenges of managing Kubernetes clusters across multiple cloud environments.
We explored the need for centralized control, robust security, and cost optimization.
And we dug into some of the leading solutions out there, comparing their strengths, weaknesses, and architectural approaches.
We also discussed the rise of edge computing and how it's changing the game for Kubernetes management.
But here's the key takeaway. There's no one-size-fits-all answer.
The right solution for you will depend on a multitude of factors, from your current scale and expertise to your security requirements and budget.
And it's not just about what works today. You need to consider how your needs might evolve as Kubernetes continues to mature and new technologies emerge.
So what can you do with all this information?
Well, first take a moment to reflect on what resonated most with you during our conversation.
Was it the different approaches to centralized control, the importance of security at the edge? Or maybe it was the realization that you need a more comprehensive strategy for managing your Kubernetes infrastructure.
Whatever it was, use that insight as a springboard for further exploration.
Dive deeper into the specific solutions or concepts that piqued your interest.
Read articles, watch demos, and connect with experts in the field.
Don't be afraid to experiment and try out different approaches.
Remember, this is a journey, not a destination.
The world of Kubernetes is constantly evolving, and the best way to stay ahead of the curve is to embrace a mindset of continuous learning and adaptation.
And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive.
We hope you found it informative and inspiring.
Until next time, happy Kubernetesing. So much to think about, right? It can feel overwhelming.
It really can. But that's why we're here, to break it down. And honestly, the research you shared, it's a great starting point.
It is. Okay, let's bring it all together.
Okay.
We started by talking about those challenges of managing Kubernetes clusters across different cloud environments.
Right, and we dug into why that's such a pain, that lack of centralized control, the security headaches, and those ever-increasing cloud costs.
We also talked about some of those leading solutions, comparing their strengths and weaknesses, and how they approach things differently.
Like OpenShift with its focus on security versus Platform 9's emphasis on ease of use. And then there's Cloud Casa, that specialist focused on backup and disaster recovery, which you might need no matter which platform you choose.
And don't forget those extra security tools like Aqua Security, Sysdig, and Kyverno. They can add even more layers of protection, especially for containerized environments.
Absolutely. It's like building a security fortress around your clusters, brick by brick. But here's the thing, and this is really important. There's no single right answer. It's not a one-size-fits-all situation.
Every organization is different, right?
Exactly. What works for a small startup with a handful of clusters might be totally wrong for a large enterprise managing hundreds or even thousands.
So the real question is, how do you choose the right solution for your specific needs?
Well, it starts with understanding those needs. What are your must-haves? What can you live without? What are your security requirements? What's your budget? And just as important, what expertise do you have in-house? Do you have a team of Kubernetes ninjas, or are you relying on a smaller team with more general DevOps skills?
Right, because if you don't have that deep Kubernetes expertise, a simpler solution like Platform 9 might be more appealing. But if you need that granular control and flexibility, OpenShift might be a better fit.
Exactly. And then you can't forget about the future. Kubernetes is changing rapidly. Your needs will likely evolve as your use of it grows and matures.
So you need a solution that can adapt, that can scale, and that can integrate with your existing tools and infrastructure.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So where do you go from here? What should our listeners be doing after this deep dive?
The first step, reflect. Think about what resonated with you the most. Was it the importance of centralized control? The need for rock-solid security at the edge? Maybe it was the realization that you need a more comprehensive strategy for managing your entire Kubernetes ecosystem.
Whatever it was, use that as your starting point.
Dive deeper into the specifics. Read more about the solutions that caught your eye. Watch some demos. Talk to experts.
And don't be afraid to experiment. Try things out. See what works for you. Remember, there's no shame in changing course along the way.
Exactly. Kubernetes is all about learning and adapting, and as you explore and experiment, you'll gain valuable insights that will help you make even better decisions down the road.
This is a journey, not a destination.
Well said. The world of Kubernetes is full of challenges, but it's also full of incredible possibilities.
So embrace the journey, stay curious, and keep learning.
We'll be here to guide you along the way.
That's it for our deep dive into Kubernetes cluster management solutions. We hope you found it helpful and maybe even a little bit inspiring.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, happy Kubernetesing.